What is up? Welcome back to the James Kennedy podcast for this another bonus episode. I don't know why I don't just start the second season already, given that I am on my third bonus episode right now. But there is just so many interesting, awesome dudes that I want to talk to. And when the opportunity arises, I just have to fucking do it and share it with you guys. Today is a case in point, and we're just going to jump straight into it today, guys. Normally, I fill you guys in about what I've been up to with my week and all that sort of thing. But to be honest, since the last time we spoke, I haven't really done anything at all other than sit in my pajamas and work on book number 2. Writing a book is a thoroughly and eventful and interesting activity, so there's literally not much I can tell you guys about my week other than I've been sitting in my office, in my studio, just fucking hammering away, man. Haven't seen sunlight, haven't shaved, haven't seen anybody, haven't gone anywhere or done anything. I've just been fucking going for it, man, and it's like, writing a book is no small task, man. Certainly for a dumbass guitar player like me. So given that I lost 6 months of the year, to being ill and stuff, I've got to play serious catch up now. So the writing the book is the priority. But still, having said that, when diaries align and there's an opportunity to chat with someone that I think is super interesting and insightful, then I just have to do it. And we got a good one for you guys today, because today's guest has lived a lot of life. He's got a lot of stories, a lot of opinions, a lot of insights, and he does not hold back. Exactly the type of person I like to talk to. So, without further ado, we are joined today by the singer-songwriter, multi-instrumentalist, and most recent member of the Levelers, Mr. Dan Donnelly. Dan, thanks so much for doing this, brother. How you doing, man?
Hi, James. Great to be here, and good to meet you again. Sort of in a bit more of a chilled and more expected setting.
Yes. What Dan is referring to is the last time that we were in a conversation together was on stage at the Beautiful Days Festival most recently, when we were doing a talk with Mark Chadwick and Tom Gray about the music industry and streaming. And Dan was like, dude, you were really fucking like right on, very opinionated, very direct, and you spoke a lot of truth that really resonated with me and, of course, the audience as well. So I'm really looking forward to continuing that chat today.
Well, it's similar to you. Like when you decide to make music your main thing, you have to know what's going on, and you've got to sort of know how you're going to navigate, making money, which is a really important thing to live. That's why I know about it. And the lockdown, essentially, whenever I stopped playing, I had to really start looking into where all the money was going from all the music that I'd made.
Yeah, didn't we all? Well, before we dive into that, because we got a load of stuff I want to get into today, can you give the listeners a brief tour of who is Dan Donnelly? Obviously, we know you now as the most recent addition to the Mighty Levelers, but you've done fucking loads of stuff before that, man. Super interesting journey. So can you give us the brief bio of who is Dan Donnelly?
My parents didn't want me to be a musician, so they told me not under their roof, so I moved out and kind of became a busker. And I was living on my mate's couch, and him and I would go busking in town. And then we saw that there was a battle of the bands in a local pub, and the prize was 150 quid. And that was more money than either of us. Like, he was on the dole and I just lived off busking. It was more money than we'd ever seen in our lives. So we essentially got a third guy who played double bass. He played acoustic guitar, I played mandolin, and we got a double bass player, and we entered this battle of the bands and won it. And then one of the judges became our manager. Wow. And we started gigging. And then we put out a few records and got and charted, and then started selling out bigger venues. Supported the Levelers in like 1994.
Wow.
And that's when I met those guys. So I've known them for a long time. And then that band split up and I moved to America and sort of did a lot of mad indie rock. So I was in an indie rock band called Joy Zipper, and we played with the Darkness.
No way.
In the Paradiso in Amsterdam. It was one of the most insane nights I've ever had in my life. And then moved back here, played a little bit on and off for the Levelers, then joined a band called the Oyster Band, that folk thing. Then I joined the Wonder Stuff for 5 years.
Wow.
And then I joined a French band called the Celtic Social Club for about 3 years, which was just stupid being in a band in another country. And then then Simon was pretty much done with touring, and I was going to get divorced if I spent any more time in France than I like. And I just Mark was playing in my town, and I went down to see him and said, I think I'm going to jack in this French band. I just can't, like, all the traveling post COVID was doing my head in. He was like, right, you need to join my band because Simon just doesn't want to tour anymore. And I've been playing with the Levelers now. That was the third Beautiful Days I've done with them.
Oh shit! I thought you.
Yeah.
So how long have you been with those guys? And I thought it was much more recent than that.
Like, well, the first thing I did was Beautiful Days 2021, so 2 years.
Right. Okay. Cool. And how's it been? You know, are they looking after you?
Well, they're like, I've known them since I was a kid, as I say, like 1994. Well, I've known them since I was about like 18, 19 years old.
Right.
And we supported them in Ireland and got on really well with them. We were sort of a similar ilk. I like came up through the sort of punk crusty thing. We all lived in a van. Right. And then they invited us over to England because we didn't really play in England that much. And they put us on one of their tours. And we just drove around in our little van after their tour bus, and we became really good friends then, and stayed mates with them. So it's almost like, having been in a load of other bands and other successful bands, it's like some of your oldest mates going like, do you want to join our band now?
Yeah, nice. And they just happen to be, the fucking Levelers.
Yeah. But they know me and I know them, so it's not like, oh, right, what's this new guitarist going to be like? They know exactly what they're going to get. Right. They know my limitations, they know my foibles, and I know theirs. Yeah. So it's like it was a perfect sort of match, really. And they're my best mates,
Ah, man, it's a beautiful thing. And, what a fucking band to have joined as well. I mean, like, with such an amazing back catalogue of awesome music. Yeah. It's a fucking great gig, bro. You know what I mean? And I love the fact that one thing I talked to Mark about when he was on the podcast was, like, their model. They're independent. They do things 100% their way and on their terms. And they've had fucking loads of success doing it as well, which is, like, it's a beautiful thing. It's just, like, to see them with the message that they've got and the music that they've got, doing it their way. And I'm seeing so much success through it as well as it's a great thing to see.
It is, yeah. And the thing about their success is they're not like, they are true anarchists. Yeah. Like, they don't actually, like, I'm a bit of a confirmed socialist, but they're like, they really do believe that there should be, like, there's no boss in the band, and which is a bit mental because nobody really makes decisions, but because of their sort of DIY punk attitude, they've ended up being really successful. So, like, instead of hiring a studio, they got an advance from a record company, bought a building and put a studio in it. And it wasn't like they're anarcho-capitalists, like, let's gather all this shit together. But they just sort of, it kind of all just fell. Their DIY attitude just behooved them really well because they now have a massive building in Brighton with a great studio in it, and they own their own label. They built their own brand themselves, and it's just all happened really well for them.
Yeah, and I find it doubly impressive that they were kind of doing what has become the mainstream standard model now for artists. I mean, artists such as myself and all of my friends and peers, we're all doing things independently, making our own records at home, releasing them independently through our own little labels and distributing them digitally and things like that. That is now very much the established model. But they were doing that kind of back in the day of the physical era, when it was a lot more expensive and logistically difficult to pull off. Yeah. So the fact that they had the foresight and the good sense to actually do that and pull it off successfully back in the bad old days when it was nigh on impossible to do that, I think, is deserves a lot of respect.
My band went and hired studios. I had like an 8-track machine. Like, I lived in a farmhouse, and we used to demo stuff in my house. But whenever we wanted to make a record, we'd hire we'd spend thousands hiring a proper studio and like a producer that would kind of tell us what to do until like we didn't really like the record anymore because it wasn't as good as the demos, because this guy had just shouted at us and we were too young to shout back. And then all the money was gone, and then the band was gone, and that was it, whereas they really stayed true to their principles, and like artistically and financially just were like, no, we're not doing that, which has stood them stood them really well, and they're still like that. They're still like that, you know.
I think it's great. I think it's a real testament to, it's a real example to others as well. To just stick by your guns, stick by your values, keep doing your fucking thing, and it'll work out. You'll certainly still be able to keep doing your thing, like you said then, which happens to most bands is you give a little here and a little there, and you start following the system's rules, the established path. And so many bands, it's the cause of their fucking death. You know what I mean? You fizzle out because of money or arguments, or you've lost your songs to the label or whatever. And it's the death of so many fucking great bands, I find. But like the level is like, even if you don't get to their level of success, following their strict model of sticking to your guns and just doing your thing your way, at least you're still gonna be able to keep fucking doing your thing, you know.
Yeah. And I've been in bands and seen a lot of contemporary bands that just ever decrease in circles, that just went by this sort of put out an album, go around all the O2s, wait a year, put out an album, go around all the O2s to slightly less people, wait a year, put out an album, go around all the O2s to slightly less people, and then, slip down the bill at all the festivals and get bored, get bitter and tired and sad and hate what you're doing, and your life is you'd rather be doing a 9 to 5. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, 100%. Man, that fucking calls for all of us, doesn't it? At some point, you got to fucking make a choice between, like faking it till you make it, or am I going to put food on the table and put the fucking heating on? You know what I mean?
Well, I always do. I always have at least 3 things going on for my mental health.
Right.
So even now, I'm really, really happy being in the Levelers. Like, I'm really happy. But I've been in bands where I don't particularly like it. So I usually, I've got my solo thing, which has been going on all my life. And then I'll have something that I do, like I've tour managed, I've driven bands,
right?
I've I teach, I do all that type of stuff, so that if the teaching's doing my head in, I can say to myself in my head, like, this is not the only thing. This is not the only thing that I do. Like, right. Don't worry. And I've left bands. I've left big bands. I've just gone. I don't want to do this. This is,
right.
And when you've got multiple things that you do, you can go, you know what? Like, I don't want to do this thing right now. I'm going to focus on my other thing.
And that's a lot more difficult to do when you're tied into a label deal as well, especially like a major label deal. It's literally impossible to say, look, I want to take a bit of time out to focus on my teaching or my mental health, or, I've got this other project that I'm going on tour with. I mean, if you're signed into a deal with a label of any kind of clout, the very thing you're describing is not a fucking option for you. You can't.
Yeah. Major labels or well, if you're in a big machine thing, I think the major label things, just it's a different world. I've been signed, I've been in a band that been signed to Mercury, and it was stupid. And we just racked up so much debt. We were flying from LA to London and getting put up in Belsize Park, for a month, right, to do one gig, and things like that. And then the band owed Mercury millions, so just so much money that the album could never recoup, and then we just got dropped, right. And that was the end of it.
Yeah, classic story, man. I mean, it happened to a band literally last year from around the corner from where I'm sat right now with a major label. And it's mental to me that given how much everything has changed in this industry, that the major label model is still very much exactly the same as it's always been.
Yeah.
Throw money at something, throw shit at the wall, and whatever sticks, go with more of that and just, drop the rest.
Yeah, absolutely. But when you do it yourself as well, you can go, you know what, I'm taking a month off from my mental health, or I'm not doing this for a while. I'm going to become a window cleaner for a bit, or whatever whatever makes you happy. You said that you've been through periods where you're you were bedridden for a while.
Yeah, I mean, that was kind of a different thing. That was a special case, really. I mean, I had a lot of trauma last year coming out of the lockdown. My father was diagnosed with terminal brain cancer, which was quite a slow and cruel journey that I was very close to. He passed away last year. And then a few months after that, I was assaulted by organized crime squad while sitting in my car. They kind of like roughed me up a bit and stripped me naked and fucked up my hand and everything. And I think just as a result of like the lockdown, my dad, I think my nervous system just kind of went, nah, kind of gave up on me for a few months. I had like migraines and vertigo and exhaustion and all sorts of fucking problems. I mean, in and out of hospital more times this past year than ever before in my entire life. But I'm kind of out the other side of that now. I've done a lot of work and I feel like, things are kind of becoming back to normal. But yeah, in terms of what you're describing, and 100% I've totally had periods like that. In fact, I spoke very openly about that in my book, Noise Damage, about how I had the opposite experience to what you're describing, where you've been able to maintain balance by being an independent artist. I actually had the opposite problem in the sense that I just became completely addicted and obsessed. I would never take any time off. I was like my own boss, and I was the worst boss to myself in the world. I wouldn't sleep. I would work around the clock. I would just be completely so overly driven and motivated all of the time, juggling all the different components to being an independent artist, that I just completely trashed my mental health. I was underweight. I was an insomniac. I was drinking every night for 10 years. I was incredibly depressed and socially isolated. It was like an addiction, and like all addictions, it takes everything from you. It takes your money, it takes your girlfriend, it takes your house, it takes your stuff, it takes your life. It takes your health. So I've kind of learned the hard way now as an independent artist still, moving forward, the importance of exactly what you're describing in maintaining balance. And I have that now, so music for me now is a beautiful and essential part of my life, but it's not all of my life anymore. It fits in amongst a variety of other things, which keep me sane, keep me grounded, and keep me happy.
Well, things to do with music, like your podcast kind of to do with music. Like I teach music,
yeah.
And I like to be in the music world and deal with musical people. Like I don't want to go and work in a toothpaste factory or something. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. But I would hate to be a touring musician, just a touring musician, because it's like anything. When you do one thing too much, it just, for me anyway, you get burnout.
Yeah.
But I've been jumped and held at gunpoint by the police, as well.
What?
What happened to us was, do you remember the IRA blew up Canary Wharf?
Yeah.
Right. Well, it was Phil Lynnett's birthday, and they have it was around St. Patrick's Day, and they had this thing called Vibe for Philo, which is like a Thin Lizzy sort of tribute evening, and we were like a sort of popular Irish band. So this guy Smiley Bolger, who ran it, got us over to play in Brixton Academy. And so everyone we knew who lived in London, like everybody who we knew that lived in London, came to the show. And it was a big thing for us to be playing at Brixton Academy. And it was sold out, and like Scott Gorham was there, and it was cool. So our mates lived in Walthamstow, and they were a punk band called the Skinflints. So there was all sorts of reprobates. There must have been about 30 people in our van, all carrying various different bits of this and that. There was some people carrying weed, people with E's, people with mushrooms, right, like in various stages of drunkenness. Right. Our drummer Rab was driving. I was in the back with about 15 people sitting on top of all our gear, probably smoking weed, etc., and Rab got lost and drove a big white van full of Northern Irish people into the financial district of London that had just been blown up about 3 weeks ago. So van stopped, and we're in the back because it's like black in the back, and it's like, oh, stop, maybe something for a piss, might be the garage. No, hold on a second. And then we could hear something happen in the front. It's like, okay, shh, keep quiet. Keep quiet. And it was like, then we were sat in there for ages and nothing was happening. And then all of a sudden, the back door opened, and there was a SWAT team, full on police with baseball caps and machine guns, M16s, and
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. So they essentially thought they'd caught the IRA, because there's people from Belfast, people from Derry, people from Fermanagh.
Oh my God.
They all looked like dickheads. Everyone had long hair and Thin Lizzy t-shirts and stuff like that. But as you can imagine, the people in actually the local police, I think, thought that they thought that they were like they'd caught the IRA.
Wow.
But the SWAT team guys knew that we were just dickheads.
Right.
And I was wearing like lime green flares, a dark green shirt, and a lime green waistcoat, and I had like fluffy like an afro, and given like it was my band and I was the only one from the band in the back. We were like a bunch of refugees, like about 15 people in the back of a splitter van. I thought I'd better like speak up first. I came out with my hands up, like loads of guns trained at me. Don't shoot. We're just musicians. And this like SWAT team guy, like down the end of like an M16, pointed into my face, said, "You're lucky we're not the fashion police, mate." So they searched us all, lined us all up against a wall, and kept us till about 6 a.m. Stood against the wall in London till they phoned every local police station in Ireland and managed to ascertain, because some of us didn't have ID, till they ascertained who every single one of us was, like with guns trained on us the whole time. Like I had to go for a piss. Had to go for a piss, and he was like, "Right, just go around the back here." I had to go for a piss with like an M16 pointed at the back of my head.
Oh my god, man! What year was that again?
Must have been. It was the 90s at some point. It was whenever the Canary Wharf bombing was. It was like a week after that, or the St. Patrick's Day after that.
They were not messing around at that point either. They were like fucking...
Well, but the thing is, for us, coming from Northern Ireland, I was used to that shit because it happens all the time at home, you know. When you're from Northern Ireland, you just expect that stuff. And being in a band in Northern Ireland, we were driving around late at night all the time.
Yeah.
We had like an ice cream van burnt out in front of our van. We had to like turn around in the street. We had army jump out of like the bushes, like just and stop us, like these, like a 19-year-old like British kid with a gun, like, and you can see like he's looking at you, like, and he's shaking and he's got a gun pointing in your face, and you're going, "Listen, man, calm down, man. We're a band. We're a band. Don't worry. You can see like, and his fingers on the trigger, and he's shitting himself, you know, and it's pointed right in the driver's window at your face.
Oh
so
my
I was kind of used to that sort of stuff happening.
Right.
They've been in an armed robbery before as well when I worked in a bar. So like,
man. I don't think we can have enough time for all this today. I got to hear about this now as well. What happened there?
Well, I was just working in a bar, and these guys came down with guns and robbed the bar. I got everyone on the ground and took all the money. But then we were paying protection money to the IRA, so we got it all back the next day. But that's just Northern Ireland, which is why I left. I came out. I was doing a gig in a place called the Duke of York, and I came out. And I'd borrowed my mum's car, and I had this cassette that someone had made me. Like it was remember you used to get made compilation tapes, and I had a compilation tape, and it was my favorite compilation tape. It had like loads of Sonic Youth on it and stuff that I was really into at the time. And someone had broken into my mum's car, smashed the windows, ripped the cassette player out, and taken this cassette and like spooled it all out down the road. So I was pretty bummed about that. Got into the car, drove to the end of the road. The army came out and said, you can't drive out of here. There's a sniper over there on the roof of that church.
Jesus Christ.
And we're like, so they were having a shootout with a guy at the end of the street. So I had to sit like in this little sort of area where my car had just been broken into for about an hour and wait for this sniper to like go away, till I could drive home from this gig. I was like, I am leaving Northern Ireland. I am getting out of this place. I do not care. And that's when I moved to New York.
Ah, right. And how did that fare up to life in Northern Ireland? You know, many similarities or completely different?
Oh, it was brilliant. New York was great. Like I arrived there with nothing to do, and I booked myself. We'd done gigs in New York, so the first thing I did was I booked myself a solo show supporting Shane MacGowan and the Popes.
Oh, nice!
And the promoter gave me $1 for every poster I put up. So I had nothing really else to do, so I just walked. Like I walked all over New York, up and down Manhattan, and every time I saw an Irish bar, I went in and said, I'm a musician, I'm doing this gig, can you put a poster in the window? So I kind of got to know the whole Irish community, and then booked myself some solo gigs and just started playing. But I had no bank account, I had no nothing, but I was making like,
wow,
the amount of money you could make just being Irish and playing in Irish bars was insane. At some points I would make like $2,000 in a week.
Fucking hell, mate. Back then as well.
Yeah, and out of nowhere, well, it's dollars, so they were worth about 60p.
Right.
But and I was like hiding money all over the house and just living like a king and just spending.
Yeah.
It was crazy. It was great times, but yeah, crazy times, but good.
Oh man, I bet, bro, you should be writing a fucking book, man.
I will do one day. I'll have to wait till I think till my parents pass away, because if they read it, they'd probably be very ashamed of some of the things that I've done.
There is that. I didn't know I was writing a book when I did mine, because if I'd known that it was going to get published and be on the shelves of my local Waterstones, I wouldn't have put half the shit in there that I put in there. I name everybody by name. I'm slagging off bands we used to play with and promoters and labels that fucked us over and stuff. So I've got a few kick-ins waiting for me around the place now. But you know, maybe that was part of the appeal, you know?
I'll have to make it sort of semi-fictional and base a few characters on things, or I'd be seriously defaming some famous people.
Oh, I bet. Yeah, no, mine were all just bottom-feeding cunts, basically. So I'm happy that I named them, shamed them.
Right.
You know, just labels, managers, and agents that just existed to screw small bands out of every fucking thing they could.
Fuck those guys.
But that notwithstanding, yeah, there's probably a few kick-ins waiting for me around the place.
Right. You just need to get a bigger psycho than their psycho. Really, that's how it works.
Right.
Yeah.
Speaking from experience now, from your background.
Yeah.
Oh man, what a fucking life you've had. For me, I feel like we got so many troubles in our industry, and we have had for a long time, you know, with regards to getting paid and, you know, fucking stability and mental health and all that sort of stuff, and substance abuse and things. For me, one of the few rewards that we get outside of the fact that we get to, you know, do the thing that we love, making music and things like that, and being around our mates and travel, is these fucking stories, man. You know what I mean? Like, if you'd gotten a job when you were 17, straight out of school, and you stayed in the fucking accountancy firm now until you retired, you wouldn't have any of this fucking stuff to talk about. Who else can say these stories? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Like you retire at 65, and someone goes like, "Well, what have you done?" Oh, well, you know, I went into this office every day and like pressed a button on a computer.
Yeah.
But yeah, the amount of I mean, like, I could sit here telling stories from now till next week. and the thing is that the beautiful thing about, well, it's kind of good, like me joining the Levelers, they've all got a bunch of their stories that I haven't heard. Right. And I can tell them stories that they don't know. So, because when you're in a band, they've been in a band together for nearly 40 years. Yeah. So they know all the stories, everybody else's stories. But when someone new comes in, they can retell all the stories to me, and then I'll be like, no way, something like that. So it's like we're all buzzing to be sharing new stories and gossiping about, like. It's great when bands get together as well, like, or a mate of mine's like a tour manager, and he works with a load of different bands, and I love telling all the stories. Oh,
we've all got loads of them, man. The conversations just go on for fucking hours, don't they? You know, be like, oh yeah, I got to this one time I was in Italy and that happened to me, you know. And it's like, for me, that's part of the love of it. I mean, it's so much bad shit's happened, you know, and it is difficult, you know, if you just focusing on music to stay afloat. Like I say, you've got to do a lot of other things, like a bit of teaching or a bit of this or a bit of that to kind of bump it up. But I mean, yeah, I wouldn't change it for the world, man. You know, it's the memories, it's the travel, it's the life experience, it's the things you've got to overcome within yourself as well. You know what I mean? To have the balls to put yourself and your creations out there and take the rejections and the doubts and stuff. You know, it's all good stuff.
It's like electing to be bipolar.
Yes.
It's like, do you want to be like 75% of the time clinically depressed, and then the other 25% of the time elated beyond belief? Yeah. You electively go, I'll take the 75% shit for the 25% of absolute joy. I'll do it. Yeah. Because, and like, sometimes, like, if you every movie, like, you know, you watch a movie and it's like some dweeb at school or whatever, like fucking, even like Back to the Future, right? There's the thing, but what does he do? What's the big finale at the end? He gets up at the school dance and plays like Johnny B. Good on the guitar. Yeah. I get to do that every night. Yeah. I get the end of Back to the Future every night, or like School of Rock. The end of the movie, the big finales, they do a concert. And it's like, it's been the Hollywood movie ending for loads of movies. And you're like, well, that's my fucking job.
Yeah,
you know,
man. Yeah.
And it is, like, it's a blessing to be able to do that bit, but the rest of it's fairly grim.
100%.
Even the being on tour, like, you know, you're hanging out. Like I always say, I do the gigs for free, but it's all the hanging around I get paid for.
mean, that's a great way of looking at it. Yeah. And I must add as well, in badass clothing. I mean, what other jobs do you get to fucking dress up like a rock star? You know what I mean? And speaking of which, I just discovered last night as a result of your Instagram post, the amazing Red Mother clothing, which you were sporting at Beautiful Days Festival, looking fucking badass, I might add. I mean, that stuff, man, like that clothing, that's right up my street. I've messaged him already because I got to get my hands on some of that shit.
He's great, Dan. He'll work with you as well. That thing I bought him up. So he lives near here, so I just came to his house with a load of shit, a boiler suit and a Clash t-shirt, like some
nice,
like a socialist patch, a load of things that I was interested in, and like just basically threw them at him and said, "Can you make this into something for me to wear?" And he was like, "Yeah," and he just did it.
Yeah, that's so cool, man.
And it's like bespoke band boy, but he does all Captain Sensible's clothes for him. He does all, so you can kind of go to him with an aesthetic and go like, I want to look like, because what I said was like, right, the Levelers have their thing, they've got that look, but I said I want to look like more like the Clash.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I mean, that's totally my thing as well, man. I mean, like, I fucking spray paint my tops, put slogans on them and stencils, and just that fucking punk rock DIY gritty graffitied kind of aesthetic. That is totally my thing. And then when I saw Red Mother clothing, particularly the one he did for you, I was like, fuck, man, that is my fucking vibe. So we've definitely got to connect,
Yeah, I can put you in touch with him. You might want to talk to him. He's probably an interesting podcast in him, because he does the clothes for loads of people, and he knows loads of like musicians, and he's he that's what he does. He goes around festivals selling cool clothes that he makes. I mean, the thing is, I could stencil something, but I'm not going to sew. I'm never going to do that amount of sewing.
No.
Like, that's always amazing me when I go to biker festivals. Like, I've played loads of biker festivals. You've got all these like real big, hard kind of like, they think they're really tough guys, and you look at their clothing and you're like, somebody, either you sew or you live with your mum and she sews loads of. You know someone who sews, or you sew, because there's a lot of needlework on your jacket. So,
that's so true.
Dan's the kind of guy that will sew stuff on a jacket, which is like something I just don't have the patience to do.
Same. Yeah. No. Well, another big shout out for Dan at Red Mother Clothing. Check him out on Instagram and check out his stuff, because and hopefully you'll see me sporting one of those bad boy creations really shortly, because I got to get my hands on some of that stuff. So yeah, big shout out to Dan at Red Mother. So one of the things I wanted to take a deep dive on, I think now is the time to do it, is the last time we spoke on stage together was obviously talking about music streaming specifically and the music industry. Mm-hmm. So I think let's just fucking kick the hornet's nest and jump into it, man, because you were very well informed and articulate and outspoken on the subject, and I think you've got a lot to offer the listeners on that subject. So let's get into it. What are your thoughts on the current state of the music industry, digital music and music streaming and all that stuff?
I started off when there was no such thing as an MP3. So, and you had to spend money in a studio and you couldn't record at home. There was no such thing really as like Pro Tools, or it didn't exist. So there was like, almost like there was the gatekeeping kind of factor was you had to be good enough to be able to afford to go into a studio and make a record that sounded like a record. Because like, as I say, I had a reel-to-reel 8-track in my house, but I couldn't make anything that was releasable at that time on it. Because, I guess Sebadoh had done something that was really lo-fi, but it just wasn't generally accepted that you could release stuff with loads of tape hiss on it and your cat meowing in the back and stuff like that. Yeah. So you had to get together a couple of grand to go to a studio and make a disc and get it pressed and get an ISRC code made by the label and all this kind of stuff. And then I think it was just when I first moved to New York, they removed music from the product, i.e. they made the MP3. So you were able to compress music. Once people started getting into computers and recording in computers, I thought, this is amazing. This is the future. But once you were able to separate the MP3 from the physical thing that it was in, music became like half a product.
Yeah.
And LimeWire started, and everyone just started stealing music because you could just send them over the internet. which I thought was brilliant at the start as well. I had LimeWire, and I was like listening to everything, and thought this is really cool. And then I thought, hang on, when I finished my album, I was like, hang on, people are stealing my stuff as well, not just like famous people's stuff. No one's. And then I thought, oh no. But it was still all right for a while. People still bought stuff, physical stuff. But I mean, recently, in the last 10 years, pretty much everyone's just stopped. Sometimes they don't even bother like bringing CDs to shows anymore, because it's just like, what's the point? Just music's become like a loss leader for live shows for me.
Right.
Essentially, I'll make it and I'll record it because it's what I do. It's like keeping a diary for me. Like I write songs, just even if the music industry didn't exist, I would write songs for myself, like just for my own mental health.
Yeah.
Like it's nothing. I don't make money from recorded music much. I've had a song taken up by a film that I did with the French band that I was in, and it's on general release in France. So I might see something from that on the PRS. My PRS is sometimes pretty good. But I don't make enough to live on, certainly.
So how do you feel about the new model now that the dust has kind of settled? Because the period that you're talking about, the 10-year transition adjustment period, that was kind of like a no man's land, wasn't it? Where like nobody knew that the old model was actually dying, and nobody knew what the new model yet was. There was just kind of like this weird no man's land in the middle that, CNN called music's lost decade.
Yeah.
Which is kind of when I arrived on the scene, to be honest. So I didn't know any different, but I've seen the change now because I've lived through it, and I can see that there very much is now an established model, and it's one that I've kind of learned to embrace, and it's one that I do like because in the previous incarnation of the music business, if you couldn't get a deal, as I've said many times before, it was fucking over for you. The door was closed. You couldn't make your own record. So I'm a big fan of so much of what the new model gives us in terms of independent empowerment and freedom and the ability to be your own boss and to carve out your own truth and your own path. But streaming is an interesting one, and I do think it's here to stay. So we have just kind of got to find ways to work with what we've got. But it's exactly what you described. As soon as you separate the music from the plastic, from the vinyl, from the CD, from the sheet music or whatever it is, the physical host that you were actually paying for when you paid for music, we have to then ask ourselves, what value does music have? And so far, the only people who've been part of that conversation have been major labels and huge fucking tech companies. And the value they put on music for the artist is essentially fuck all. So how do you understand the streaming world? What are your thoughts on it?
Most of us think it's terrible because we don't, like, smaller people like us don't recoup that quickly, right? And that's the main problem. And I think that Tom, who's like massively, obviously studied in this, his main problem is the how slowly the money comes in. It like drip feeds in,
right.
So it kind of it disincentivizes you unless you're independently wealthy. Because what used to happen was you press up 1,000 CDs. When I did a load of gigs, then got 1,000 tenors given back to you. So you got 10 grand. And then you were able to spend that 10 grand hiring musicians, going into a studio, making another album. And then you press 1,000 of those, went out on tour, and you got 1,000 tenors back. Now you do the same. Well, hopefully the same process. It's a bit cheaper now because no one expects to be paid that much anymore, and studios don't really expect to be paid that much anymore. Yeah. And it just drip feeds you like a little bit of money every now and again. But technically, and what I was saying when I was trying to be devil's advocate, if you write the next, Merry Christmas Everybody, or the next huge, I think Baby Shark was the thing that I used, something that people will stream all day, every day. In the past model, you got your tenner for it, and that was it. And then people took it away and owned it forever. But now, with the streaming model, if people listen to your song 100 times a day, every day, you could potentially, from a really good song, make more money. Do you know what I mean? Eventually. But it just takes you a longer amount of time. You'd probably be dead by the time you'd make the amount of money you would from the old model. So in theory, if you were Daniel Ek or whatever, you could just say the songs you're writing aren't good enough to make enough money because people aren't streaming them enough. So you need to write more songs, and then you just become a slave to an algorithm till it's like if you want to win the lottery, buy more lottery tickets.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? And so it's essentially, you know, maybe if you're Paul McCartney or if you're The Weeknd or something, you maybe quite like streaming, because people, rather than buying your album once, are essentially in it very cheaply, buying it again and 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 again. So for those guys, the top 5%, it's probably really, really good. But for us guys that need to sort of generate income, music is essentially a loss leader for live shows.
Right.
So that people will go on and stream your stuff, and you make, you know, a little bit of money from it, not enough to live on, but people will, when you go to wherever, you know, Narberth, people in Narberth will know like your music because it's free to listen to, or people, you know, someone who knows my music might go and stream your band now,
right,
like from listening to this podcast, or someone who likes your music might go and stream. Whereas beforehand, they'd have to go and physically find it or order a copy, and they mightn't have bothered doing that. So music's much more accessible. And with the model that is there now, people are spending more on music than they ever had before, because even people who don't like music have a subscription to one of these things. But my main gripe is with Spotify, because they don't create anything. They don't create, like Apple creates stuff. There's Apple TV. So Apple gives a vehicle for musicians to get their music onto films, onto television. You know, Amazon does the same. Right. Amazon Music, there's Amazon TV, Amazon fulfill. But Spotify does nothing except take money from musicians. It needs to start doing something. They need to start a label. They need to start an artist development scheme, or they need to start making films or doing something. Right. But all they do is take. They're the ones I hate. They're the ones I hate the most.
That's a very good point. Yeah, very good point.
The only thing they do well is data. Like Spotify for Artists gives you a really good idea of where your stuff's being listened to and how much you're downloading and all that kind of stuff. And you can go on an artist page and see how many streams they get, how many things they do a month or whatever. But that's all they do. They're sort of like data generators and music vultures.
A bit like social media platforms, you know, the biggest content providers in the world, like Facebook, don't create any content.
No.
They provide the platform, and we filter our shit into it, and then an algorithm decides what the other person gets to hear.
And as musicians, we realize that we are the product. People using Facebook and Twitter and Instagram think it's a product, and you're like, no, man, you're the product.
You're the product.
You're the product
you
here. Like, and you're giving yourself away for free. You're taking pictures of yourself in a bikini on holiday, and you think that like it's part of like this. You're adding to this product. No, you're the product. People like you don't know are looking at your holiday snaps and maybe laughing at you. You're the product. Like, yeah,
100%.
What I was saying at the talk was like MTV was the first thing to do it. Like, and we were all like killing ourselves to try to get our videos on MTV. MTV did nothing but show other people's hard-earned like product that they'd spent ages making. And but the thing is, at least if you got on MTV, when you got TV plays, when you got radio plays, you got a decent return. But it's just the return from streams is so low. It's just so low.
And if you get that lucky like lottery that you were talking about, I think the lottery is a great analogy, because I had Simon Raymond on the podcast from Bella Union Records, from the Cocteau Twins. And he was saying they had a band called Beach House, I think it was.
Oh, yeah, I remember Beach House.
And they got lucky. I think they got playlisted, or I think it was TikTok. I think somebody on TikTok, an influencer, used one of their ballads as like backing music, and it went fucking crazy on TikTok. And then I think they had something like 600 million streams on Spotify, and made a fucking more money than they'd ever made it like combined before. And made a shitload of fans, and then sold out their next, you know, record and tour or whatever. But I mean, that is essentially, it was possible, and it's amazing that that's now possible these days. But it is literally a lottery, though, isn't it?
Being devil's advocate to Tom Gray again, right? The music industry's always been like that, you know. Like, I came up alongside Snow Patrol,
right?
And they were like this little indie band, and we used to play like the same venues as them. And Andy and Archer, who was like a solo singer-songwriter that wrote these quite lovely introspective songs. And then Ian Archer and Snow Patrol co-wrote that song Run. And then it just became massive. And again, it just takes that one thing. And then they just both went interstellar. Snow Patrol became huge.
Yeah.
And then everyone wanted to co-write with Ian. So Ian then co-wrote Jake Bugg's stuff. He co-wrote James Bay's stuff. Right. He just co-wrote stuff with Liam Gallagher. Because everyone noticed that when he became a co-writer with Snow Patrol, they became huge.
Wow.
So people went, who do we get in to co-write? So now Ian's got a beautiful, big studio in Brighton,
right,
and just co-writes. That's what he does. And as a singer-songwriter in Northern Ireland, he would play to like 30 people, and Snow Patrol as an indie band would have played to like 100 people, 200 people, until that one thing happened. So the music industry was always like that. You sort of, somebody would get plucked from obscurity and then suddenly be famous, and it was always like a lottery.
Right.
And the top 5% of people in the world always earn more than the other 95% put together.
Yeah.
And the music industry was always like that anyway.
Right. Okay.
And people like us always struggled. Like, whenever there was physical sales, I wasn't doing much better. So I do get it. And when we weren't able to play live during the pandemic, it was a big deal for me. And I sat down and sorted out loads of my copyright, the stuff that you can never be bothered doing.
Yeah.
The only thing I couldn't sort out was around 2002, I made an album when I was living in America, and I didn't have a bank account, and I got it distributed by a company called The Orchard.
Yeah.
And got them, and they used to send me physical paper checks to my house.
Wow.
For the royalties. And then I moved out of that house, and probably there's like checks still being sent there for this one album that it got released sort of on the digital physical cusp. There's probably a load of checks for like $22. Probably that my old landlady has to keep throwing out. And I still haven't managed to sort that out.
That's fucking awesome.
But I found about $2,000 that I knew. There was loads of songs I'd written that I knew were getting played, that I wasn't getting any of the money. They were getting sent to this guy that was a DJ called Dan Donnelly.
What? That
lived in America. And then so I really found out the whole process of what happens. So once the money doesn't get claimed, because a mate of mine's pretty high up in the PRS, so I had a sort of off the record conversation with him. Once the money doesn't get claimed, it goes back to a place called ICE in Germany. And then if you leave it there, like Paul McCartney gets it all, or Bono takes it, or whatever, the people with a team of lawyers that search down royalties, it'll all just go to them.
Yeah.
But luckily, this other Dan Donnelly was like a dance producer, but he hadn't updated his bank details. So like all this money was sat in his name, and my PRS, I made my PRS. I had joined the PRS when I was 16, and I made it as Daniel Donnelly. And then I joined a couple of bands, and I was in a band that was signed to Sony Publishing, and they sent all the publishing to Dan Donnelly. So it bypassed me and went to this other guy.
Right.
But during lockdown, I was able to trace it all back, and then go to Sony BMG and go and create myself an alias on PRS as Dan Donnelly.
Right.
And then made a phone call and eventually got all that money back, and now all the money from those songs is coming to me. So
Good.
I would never have done that was a tour still doing gigs.
Yes.
Because it's the stuff that you just don't want to do. Nobody wants to do admin.
Well, publishing is fucking boring as well, isn't it? Like, I set up my own publishing company, and it's fucking grim, man. Yeah. It's so boring. But it was the one thing that actually brings money in, ironically, apart from touring.
Well, I made a band. I made a band as out of an argument called the Wooden Faces, and we got signed to a label everything was going really well until lockdown, and then the guys the guys who were running the label from London, once they stopped going to shows and weren't hanging out with bands in Denmark Street and like drinking cocktails and sniffing coke, realized that the other side of running a label was just the most boring thing that you could possibly ever do. And they said, we don't want to be a record label anymore. We're folding the label. Sorry,
it's too fucking boring.
Boring,
and it is.
But for me, that part that I got massively into, like, where are all my royalties going at that point, because I literally thought I was going to starve if I wasn't gigging.
Right.
So I learned a load about it, and look, which is probably why I sounded knowledgeable about it when we were doing that talk. Right. Where's all my money gone? Like, how come I'm not getting paid for this? How come we're not getting paid for that? But yeah, lockdown was good for that, I guess.
But you're making me think now, man, because there's a reality TV douche in America called James Kennedy, who I always get mixed up with online, despite the fact that he's American, he's got blonde hair, he's a TV douche. We look nothing alike, and we exist in polar opposite worlds, you know. But I still get mixed up with him all the time on social media. You know, US Weekly even did a feature on how ridiculous it is. But he's a DJ, so he's got a music channel as well on Spotify and stuff like that. So if that motherfucker gets any of my royalties, I'm going to be really pissed.
Do you know who got some of my royalties? Declan Donnelly from Ant and Dec.
What?
Declan Donnelly, yeah. But I got it back. PRS corrected it automatically.
Fuck, man.
Because PJ and Duncan did like pop songs, I think, in like the 1990s.
But I mean, it's not even the same fucking name.
No, it's not at all. But the weird thing was, it was for this really boring song that I wrote that I didn't think would generate any money. And it wasn't that much money, but it just got auto-corrected.
Right.
And Declan Donnelly had the money. But I mean, you know, if you do start to look into it, I'm sure you'll find there's money being misdirected somewhere. Right. Because it's just a huge quagmire of people that are probably 21, like trying to do like a boring admin day job. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Going down a click down menu.
Yeah. So it's not as airtight as we might think then. So yeah, I mean that's a great example for like any musicians listening. As boring as it is, go through and do the fucking admin, man. I did the same thing in lockdown. I had a spreadsheet. I had all my song codes. I fucking went through and re-registered everything and got rid of all the duplications and stuff like that. Fucking boring, but I think it needs to be done, you know?
But that's why I will sign I guess I've signed a 50-50 publishing deal with the Levs publishing company, because they have a guy that will literally sit and do all that stuff. Right. And I can have 50% of like a lot of money or 100% of a lot less money. Yeah. Because I know I won't do it. I know I won't do it, and I know it'll be on my list of things to do. But I'll be like, oh, I need to cut the grass instead, or like, you know, anything. I'm going to sit and write a song instead, or I'm going to do something. I will not do it. Yeah, no, I signed a sub-publishing deal with Cobalt for that exact reason. I was like, no, they're great. They're great. I'd rather give like fucking 20% away or whatever on the sub-publishing deal than ever have to do this ever again. Yeah, like, do you want 80%? You want 80% at 10 grand, or do you want 100% at 2 grand? Like, I'll take the 80% at 10 grand. Never have to do a spreadsheet ever again. Yeah, and you don't. Yeah, it's so it's soul destroying, and that's why I feel really sorry for kids coming up, because they've got to do all this. Oh, it's so hard, man. And they've got to do everything. I mean, it's the same for create content. Yeah, content constantly, you know. And you got to be a graphic designer. You got to be a fucking secretary. You've got to be a video editor, photographer, publisher, everything. You record your own audio. You mix it. You master it. Yeah. It's like, I don't think I'd do it now. I'd rather just be a postman. Yeah, I know what you mean. I mean, for me, it's a bit different because it's all I know. Like, my first record was done where I did everything myself. You know, like literally nobody was involved in it apart from me. I wrote everything, played all the instruments, produced it myself, released it myself. And, you know, it was done out of necessity rather than anything else. You know, I lived in a little village. I didn't know any musicians, had no money, you know, so I just had to, that was the only option available to me at that point. And like, now that's how I started. So now that's kind of just the way that I've always done things, because that's all I know, you know. But it's incredibly like insular, isn't it? You know what I mean? Like, luckily for me, I'm an antisocial motherfucker. So I you know, and I'm able on enough sort of instruments to be able to do that. Whereas I know that for, you know, most musicians, that's not the case. And also most people, you know, they prefer the collaborative aspect of it. They prefer the social aspect of it. So I mean, it's great for weirdos like me, but I mean, you know, most people are just not going to do that. It's doable, but it's like boring. Do you know what I mean? Like, you could never have a girlfriend and buy a sex doll if you wanted, but it would be terrifically boring. Do you know what I mean? Your life would be like, simplified but extremely boring.
Right. Yeah.
Like for me, I just like interactors. There's certain musicians that I just love interacting with,
right?
And certain instruments that like I just don't play that well. Like I'm a crap drummer. I can program drums, but then nobody wants programmed drums. And then there's a double bass player I always play with that just sounds so good, and a fiddle player that when I make my solo albums that I always play with that I just love the sound of it. Sometimes we're not in the same room, we just send each other files. But it's nice to just have somebody else involved that you can talk to about it.
Yeah.
Like and touring on your own as well. I remember being in Bristol on a Sunday and the venue doesn't open till 6 o'clock, and
hanging around.
You were playing in Taunton the night before, so it only took you an hour to drive there, and you can't drink because you're driving. The amount of crap movies I've been to see just because I've been on tour on my own, and like you've nobody to talk to.
100%.
You're lonely.
100%.
Like I think a lot. I kind of realized I don't do so many solo gigs anymore because I'm kind of enjoying being in different bands and working with other people, and music's more of a social event for me.
Right.
That's why I really didn't do any of the online lockdown gigs, because it was like I am not sitting in my attic playing a gig into my laptop. I'm just not going to do it.
I did a few. It was fucking weird.
I didn't do any. It was the most crackless thing I could imagine doing. I actually did one for a festival that I was booked to play down there, but I did it all beforehand and recorded it and edited it and sent them a 45-minute video.
Right.
So that like I wasn't staring at like finishing a song and then just staring into the laptop and then going, right, this next song is
thanks guys, you've been awesome.
I mean, some people did really well at it. My mate Ian Prowse made a fortune, and he turned his whole house into like a variety show sort of thing. You should talk to him about that, because lockdown really improved his career. He did a weekly thing that he sold a load of merch and he did really well. He played the festival actually as well, but it wasn't for me. Like for me, it's about human interaction, really.
I think it is for most people. I think. I mean, some genres lend themselves to the lone wolf thing, or electronic genres, perhaps, or solo artists and things. For me, it's kind of all I know, and I am a bit of a fucking control freak anyway, so it kind of works out well because I'm quite fast at it now, so I can just do it all quite fast and put it out. But I think most people, they get into music because it's the human connection sort of thing, isn't it? It's a kind of a social sport, So what kind of Given that, and given the situation that we're in now, the way that music is made and the way it's consumed and the way that it's distributed, what would you say then to bands coming up now that kind of want to, they want the same dream that we had? They want to play in a band, they want to get out and do some shows with their fucking mates and see a bit of the world and have the stories about the police and shit like that, I mean, how do they do it?
I still think you get in a fucking van or your drummer's car and you gig swap with other bands and you go and play. You play to 10 people, then you play to 20 people, then you play to 30 people. I still think that that's the best way to make. There's so much noise on the internet, 100,000 singles get released every day. People will move. People have so much power and agency, they will move on to the next thing really quickly. But you drive down to the local pub, the Dog and Duck, and play. They will remember you and they'll stream your songs more, and you keep a genuine connection. My first band used to make a little magazine that we post ourselves, we photocopied and we would mail it out to a mailing list every month, but make a genuine connection with people. And I think a part of that needs to be going out and doing gigs, and I know that some people say, oh, you can just get famous on TikTok or whatever. But I'm old school. Just because it's on the World Wide Web doesn't mean everyone in the world is going to listen to it or want to listen to it. One thing I did when I was at a particularly low ebb in my life and had nothing to do was I just did house concerts. and I went round in people's houses.
I've done some of them. They're awesome.
Yeah. You make lifelong fans because you've met their mum.
Yes.
You've played with their kids. You've like stroked their dog. Yeah. They've fed you some dinner. You slept on their floor.
You're hanging out as well. Like, you know, I mean, that's what I did when I did my solo tour before the lockdown. I had the same experiences yourself, you know what I mean? Like sitting around in a fucking airport by yourself, sleeping on the bench for hours, just bored out of your mind, you know, because you're by yourself. But that gave me the opportunity, because I was sleeping in the van, you know, gave me the opportunity to actually just do the show. And instead of fucking having to burn off, you know, pack a ton of gear into the van and then head off, you know, it was like I just hung out and got to spend time with people. And it's a wonderful fucking experience because, you know, it's not only the show, then you're deepening that connection with, you know, I hate the term fans, but like they become lifelong friends almost, and it deepens the connection for both sides, you know? Yeah,
the thing is, right, it's like a pyramid. You've got like at the top of the pyramid, there's people that just love everything that you do and will listen to everything that you do and will come to all your shows.
Right.
And you probably know them by name. And if they got in touch with you, you'd probably put them on the guest list. They wouldn't even have to pay in. You know, they're like, they go between fans and mates. Then a level down the pyramid, you've got like fans. I know you hate the word fans, but people that are fanatical about what you do.
Yeah.
And then further down the pyramid, you've got a wider sort of strata of people that know who you are, that like would stream your stuff every now and again and might go to your show if they are free on the night and it's a reasonable venue and price. And then the internet, I think, is only good for the bottom bit, with a really wide bit, which is funneling a load of people into that bottom space. And once you have stuff out there that's there, it's like putting a ticket link up, like saying that you exist, like that they're able to buy tickets. The only way you move them up the pyramid is by getting in a van, going to their town, like getting your picture taken with them, you know, accepting a pint that they buy you, like, you know, and then they've got a story that they can tell about you, or they say they met you, or, you know, whatever. And I think nothing drives people up the pyramid of like fandom, like going and doing it, like going and gigging. But that's the model. That's the model I came from, you know. And me, you know, if you got someone on who's 20 years younger than me, they might say I'm talking total shit. That I should be making more content, and I can't even go on TikTok.
That's way too difficult, Dan. What, you know, it's a piece of piss, mate. Just shoot a video on your phone, just put it out on TikTok. You're fucking done. You're going to leave the house.
I can't open TikTok. I can go on Instagram, right? I quite like Instagram because it's slowly paced. When I open up TikTok, it brings me straight to a load of stuff of people that I don't know, for a start, like that I'm not following. And it's usually people either having a fight or like a scantily clad girl that looks like really close to being underage, or just something that I just feel like I shouldn't be looking at. So I usually open it up and go, whoa, and close it down again.
Fuck this, 100%. Yeah.
So I can't even look at
100%. You're not missing anything. You're not missing anything. Trust me, I've delved into that world, you know, posted a bit and tried to get a feel for it, you know. But no, I don't think you're missing anything at all. And it's very much what you described, I think. You know, unless you go fucking viral, which, speaking of Skin Dredge, you know, they had a viral dance blow up on TikTok a couple of weeks ago from a song they did 20 years ago, which helped them get to number 2 in the album chart last week. So I mean, but that wasn't through design. That was just through fucking randomness. You know what I mean? So unless that happens, you know, then, you know, TikTok is awesome. But I mean, outside of that, it's like fucking, literally just a fucking waste of time.
But I think to a certain extent, you and I are talking about an area of the music industry where there's actual industry.
Right,
you know,
right.
Like the TikTok success thing is like, it's lottery ticket shit, isn't it? That's the like, you know, a golden hand coming down from the sky and plucking you up into the clouds and making you a superstar thing. That, which was, you know, the equivalent of like what we would think in our day was like Richard Branson walking into your show in the Dog and Duck and going, oh my God, here's £1 million. Let's go to Hawaii and make a record, you know, that type of thing. But there is an actual whole industry there of people that nobody ever finds out that exist unless they're in the know, you know. And we're in that area of the industry where people do actually work and they don't win their career off the telly in a competition, or, you know, people. And my advice to those real musicians and real sort of people like us that are sitting writing writing songs and earnestly have something to say is get in your car, book yourself some gigs, get a support slot with some people, go to gigs, and just go do physical stuff. Like fuck the internet. Really, it's a useful tool, but it's only 50% of the world, and the other 50% actually is really rewarding if you get out and get into it. So turn off the laptop, like get into your car, go down to the Dog and Partridge and go, can I come to the open mic on Monday and sing my songs? Start there. Like, do physical shit. Like, the internet isn't everything.
Love it. I totally agree as well, man. I totally agree. And you can, I know it is expensive these days, to get out and gig if you want to do some gigs in London or something like that. But I think stay local, man. You can fucking all drive there in one car. You can sleep in your own bed at the end of the night then. You haven't got to worry about where you're going to sleep or anything like that.
Fuck London. No, the more obscure a place that you can find, the more grateful they are that there's something going on. Like, drive to Narberth, or drive to go to Skipton in Yorkshire, and everyone will go oh, there's some they'll be like, there's a Welsh guy playing in the local pub on Saturday. It's only a £5 in. Should we go and see it? Or whatever. And then you meet them, and then they go, oh, and then they're able to go home, and then this is where the internet becomes useful. They go, oh, let's go listen to his records. Oh, I quite like these. Right. And then, next time you come back and it's the tenner, they'll come and they'll buy a T-shirt this time because they've been listening to your stuff on. Go to the more obscure obscure places are always just happy that you're there, because no one ever goes there. You go to London, nobody gives a shit. They're like, "Ooh, we saw Nick Cave last night. I'm not going to buy that." Or they'll come to your show and stand there and wait for you to impress them. They're not at all grateful that you've driven 100 miles and paid 40 quid for your van to get into the ULEZ, and and are staying in a £150 hotel that night. Like, they're just like, ooh, well, I saw Tom Waits last week. That was much better. Do you know what I mean?
That's great advice. It makes a lot of sense as well. Yeah, definitely rings true with my own experience. It was always
Abergavenny.
Oh, don't get it. The posh down there. But at least they got money though. Yeah.
Oh yeah, there's nothing said for people with disposable income. They'll buy a T-shirt just to give to their children to make themselves look cool.
Look cool. Yeah. But that was always my experience. It's like we would be on a tour or something like that, and then you always have those couple of dates where you'd be like, I don't know what the fuck that is, but hey, it's en route to the thing on Tuesday, so you do it. And it's always those ones where you're going down a little lane and you're like, there's no way there could be a fucking rock club down here. You find this little pub that's been, got a stage in the back or something like that, and fuck, there's nothing for miles around, and you're like, this is going to be a fucking washout, and then everyone turns up because there's nothing else going on, and it turns out to be like the best gig you fucking did,
Have you ever heard of a bar called Tan Hill?
No.
It's the highest pub in England, right? It's a gig, and you can book yourself a gig there, right? And the first time I ever went there, I thought someone had played a prank on me, because you literally drive into the Yorkshire Dales, into the middle of nowhere, and there's nothing there. And I didn't think the pub was there, and I was like, someone's playing a really elaborate practical joke on me. And then I drove over the crest of a hill, and do you know what it is? It's the pub that they use in An American Werewolf in London.
Ah, right. Fucking, you played there. Wow.
It's that pub,
wow.
Right? So, and like, you go to it and you go, oh my God, this is a mistake. And like, you go in the afternoon and there's nobody there. But what it is there's like loads of satellite towns or like villages with feck all going on in them. And people all show up and they all sleep in the car park and pitch tents outside.
Fucking hell.
And then you go from thinking like it's the biggest mistake you've ever made to it being packed full of lunatics that have all just come there, and they all go mad, and they're all staying in tents outside, so they get hammered. And it gets snowed in every December. There's a band gets stuck in there. Last year it was an Oasis tribute band though. So like you went to see an Oasis tribute band and you end up having to stay 3 days with them.
Just stuck with the fuckers.
Until a snowplow can come and get you out.
That's hell. Yeah, that's hell. What's that place called?
It's an interesting gig.
What's it called?
Tan Hill. Tan Hill.
Right.
It changes management though about because everyone who takes it over goes crazy because it's literally in the middle of nowhere. So every time I've played there about maybe 5 times, and every time it's been a different manager. Right. Because the last one's gone nuts.
That's fucking
it's
awesome.
Like the Overlook Hotel from The Shining,
Right.
If you take it over, you slowly go crazy.
Oh, that's fucking brilliant, man. Yeah, I feel like that needs to be definitely the next itinerary for the next tour that we do.
Yeah, people show up.
That's fucking wicked, man. Well, man, like I said, I don't want to keep you all day. I mean, you're dropping a lot of fucking great insights and wisdom here and advice for any, like, you know, up-and-coming bands, whatever, who listen to the podcast. And you did mention, I think, that you do a bit of teaching. Is that right?
Yeah, I do. I do. I had degree level for the University of Sunderland. It's like music industry. I wrote a degree for the University of Sunderland.
Okay.
Essentially, like all the stuff that I wish I'd been told, like that you can actually get funding to make an album from the Arts Council,
right.
Or you can get funding to like develop your practice from the Arts Council, or how to pay your taxes, how to register with the PRS. You get all these degrees that sort of tell you how to play Sex on Fire, and you're like, I don't want to play Sex on Fire. Or they tell you how to play like a piece on the guitar, but like no one tells Bob Dylan he has to be a better singer, or like, you know, tells Woody Guthrie he's got to learn more chords on the guitar.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's sort of just it's called modern music industries, and it tells people, oh, that's it. I'm actually working with one of our students who's from Newport.
No way.
Ruby Kelly.
Okay.
And she's just released a single called Hometown about missing Newport.
Wow.
And it's getting some play down there in Wales. She's been on the BBC Introducing down in Wales. Adam Walton has played her.
Right.
And she's getting played in, I think it's Glamorgan. It's Radio Glamorgan has played her a few times. And she played the festival that we've just played. Right. I think it was one of her first festivals. She's starting to do really well. She's one of our students that are starting to take off.
Oh, that's wicked, man. What's her name? Ruby Kelly?
Yeah, Ruby Kelly.
Wicked, man. Right, well, that's on my listening list for later on. Little shout out to Ruby Kelly there from Newport.
Yeah.
Go and check her out. Right, well, I'm going to rapidly switch gears here now, Dan, because I know that you've got to go soon. I've already kept you over time. But we haven't done any politics yet, man. And you referred to yourself earlier as the big bad S word. So I'd like to ask you, how are you feeling as a socialist in Britain in 2023?
Politically homeless. I'm politically homeless. To me, Jeremy Corbyn was like a sort of left of centre kind of character. And to everybody else in the country, they thought he was like a raging communist because he's like suggested that some people should have free Wi-Fi or whatever.
Yeah.
I think that the working class in this country have been sedated by like, you know, hot tubs and like credit cards, fake tans, and like, you know, Range Rovers on credit. And whenever a politician like Jeremy Corbyn comes along and talks about helping working people, they all go, he's not talking about me, right? I'm not working class. Yeah. I'm all right.
Yeah.
So the country's full of like all these I'm all right Jack people that don't realize that they're being ripped off, and nobody wants to admit that like they're not doing so well. So Corbyn, well-meaning as he was, came across accidentally as slightly patronizing to a lot of working class people by going like, I want to help, you know, if like it's like someone coming up to you and going like, are you okay? You'd be like, yeah, I'm fine. Like what, you know, and that's what Britain was like with Jeremy Corbyn. So I think Keir Starmer, I mean, when I met you, I was dressed as Keir Starmer.
That's right. To
yeah. Get sponges thrown at me, I was Starmer and sauce because I bear a resemblance to him. But Keir Starmer is essentially a placeholder for the establishment. That's the way I see it. He'll build up a bit of public goodwill. Everyone will forget like how terrible the Tories are. They'll get back in 5 or 10 years. The Labour Party, just like under Blair, will have built up a bit of like public confidence, a bit of public money, and they'll have put a little bit of money back into the NHS, into education. Everyone will start to feel, oh, this is all right again. Then the Tories will get in for another 20 years and just steal it all again, essentially. Right. And everyone's just sleepwalking into this again. And I'm being told that I should vote Labour because we need to get the Tories out. So it's kind of like saying to your mate that's on heroin, like, you just go on to methadone, just so you stop doing the heroin, rather than going, do we just let him bottom out on heroin? Maybe this country needs to bottom out on capitalism I mean, it almost has bottomed out in capitalism. The rivers and the sea full of shit. Like, companies are just like raping everybody, like the gas companies, the water companies, the banks. This is just a paradise for large corporations to prey on normal people, and nobody realizes it. Maybe we just need to take it as far as we can till everyone says, you know what, maybe this is not a good idea. Maybe putting in a different version of the Tories that is still saying like we need to privatise the NHS and you're not allowed to strike and we're not going to revert. Maybe it's not a good idea. Like maybe we just need the Tories to get back in to realise how that trickle down economics doesn't work, and that capitalism it doesn't work. Like I'm not saying communism works or like we should be like I think we should just have a benevolent dictatorship.
Right.
Just like, because democracy doesn't work because people in this country are stupid. They're stupid. They're too stupid to vote.
Yeah.
We should just get like Steve, like you know the way like they pick the Dalai Lama in Tibet. We should just go to Stephen Fry, like, right, you run the country. We'll do anything you say, and whenever you die, you get to pick who runs the country for the next till they die.
I'm down with that.
And sort of like, and anything they say, like, you know, Turkmenbashi in Turkmenistan, he made it illegal to lip sync. He made it illegal to have facial hair. He had a heart attack, so he banned smoking. He replaced the word for bread with his mother's name, but he was like he was a benevolent dictator of Turkmenistan, and he called the country after himself because he was called Turkmenbashi.
Love it.
And it was fine. He's an incredibly interesting character, but we should have like a Turkmenbashi. Just pick somebody like that's intelligent and say you run the country. Like, you know, like Sandy Toksvig or something like that.
I'm actually down. Dude, you've converted me, mate. Yeah, because I don't think we're ever going to bottom out and have a revolution rise up in this country. I don't think it's a British thing. You know, the French are setting fire to the fucking town, you know, when they just want to like change a bus lane or something.
They beheaded their monarchy.
How fucking cool is that? I know. Yeah. But you're right. We're too gutless to do that. We're too gutless to do that. Never going to happen. And I don't know if the politicians that we've got are kind of reflective of the values in our society right now. This kind of I'm all right, Jack mentality, which is the only reason I could think of that we keep electing the fucking Tories for 13 years in a fucking row. You know what I mean? When they've done nothing but wreak havoc on the lives of everybody apart from the fucking 1% and their mates.
We haven't even elected the last couple of them.
Exactly, yeah.
Nobody voted for Sunak.
Nope.
Do you know what I mean?
Nope.
But I mean, weirdly, he's better than Bar. Like, you know, it's an improvement. Nobody's voted for him, but he's an improvement on the last two. Like Liz Truss, like for fuck's sake, the woman who was outlasted by a lettuce, and then Boris Johnson, that just is incapable of telling the truth.
Yes,
like
yeah, and it's not even like they don't even have to hide it anymore. It's kind of like the Trump era, you know what I mean? The era of the strong man, where you can just overtly laugh about it and lie on camera in public, and no one gives a shit anymore. It doesn't matter.
We live in a post-truth society now. But we also live, and this is I'm a confirmed socialist, right? But I find myself sometimes politically aligned to like libertarian right-wing people where things are concerned. So we almost live in a post-ideology, post-truth society, right? For example, Brexit, right? Like, whenever we were going into the European Union, me and all my mates were anti because it was big business, because it was like globalization, it was Reagan, it was Thatcher. We were totally against it. And then when we first went to come out of it, I thought it was a good idea because it really turned Ireland into a different country than it had been.
Right.
But then I looked at like Boris Johnson and Rees Mogg, and I was thinking, why have they got the same? Why have they got the same sort of beliefs that I do, that the European Union's like big business and it's bad, but I realized I voted to remain because once I saw like people like Rees Mogg were into it, I realized there was something wrong with it. Right. But like almost it used to be like a line where one edge you had like sort of left-wing socialist anarchists, and at the other side you had like libertarian right-wing people that like don't believe the government should interfere in your affairs at all. Yeah, that's like bent into a circle now. Yes, almost where the lines are blurred, but like, you know, certain things like on COVID, on Brexit, you almost find yourself aligning with like right-wing libertarians on certain issues. Yeah, and it's like. So the lines have become blurred, ideologies have become blurred, and I know that this country will never accept. So what's going to happen is probably Labour are going to get in, and Keir Starmer, that is going to be seen as centre left. and then the right gets the ability to lurch further to the right, and then the left becomes, like Tony Blair became the center left, whereas he was like, in comparison to like Michael Foot or Tony Benn.
Oh yeah, quite.
He wasn't, he was quite right wing.
Yeah.
And then the Daily Mail and the Sun say those are like lefty policies. And then I don't know how far the right can go. They'll just want it to be legal to hunt the poor or something. I don't know how much worse it can get. Like, really.
And we'll probably fucking go with it if that happens, because the Daily Mail and the Sun will tell people, if we don't do that, the fucking small boats are going to come and invade us, and we go, okay, we better go and hunt the poor then.
Yeah. People are thick. Most people in this country are thick. Like it's like if when you go to a gig and you'll go like, if you ask the crowd to request songs,
it's a bad move.
You'll be on like your second last song, and they'll ask you for like some ballad that you did like about breaking up with someone when you were like 16, and you'll be like,
they'll say Wonderwall.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Do you know? Yeah. Freebird or whatever. You're like, right. You know what? I write the set list because you guys are thick. Yeah,
you can't be trusted. Yeah.
Like, I know how to make a show. You guys are stupid. That's the way it goes. That's why I think we should have a benevolent dictator.
There we go.
Just someone that's intelligent, and get rid of democracy. Because like either that, or you have to have an IQ test to get in the vote. Do you know what I mean? Some sort of exam you got to fill in, like a historical exam about things that have happened, and
love it.
Like who actually won the World War, like, and stuff like that.
Well, there we go. You just fucking, what a place to fucking round off, man. You've just solved it. Enough of this fucking left and right fucking bullshit. Let's just find our guy,
Yeah, I've inadvertently called everyone who's listening an idiot.
Well, if they listen to this podcast, they probably are, dude, to be fair.
I've just called everyone in Britain an idiot. There you go. My shows will empty out pretty quickly.
Yeah.
I'm Dan Donnelly. You're all idiots. Good night.
Oh, Dan, man, I really love this chat. I mean, there's so much more I feel like we could talk about. There's so many things I want to ask you about, but I know I can't keep you forever, but hopefully we can do it again sometime. And thanks for coming on, man. I've really enjoyed the chat.
Thank you. It's been great fun. Cheers.
Thank you, man. Best wishes with everything, and let's make that Newport thing happen, and we'll see you down the Dog and Duck.
Oh, let's do it. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you, Dan. Take care, mate.
Speak soon.
See you, bro.
Bye. All the best. Bye.
Dan Donnelly, ladies and gentlemen, put it together for him. What a cool dude. That was a really fun chat, and I'm so glad we could make that happen. Man, that guy was just knocking the truth bombs out, man, on a range of subjects. He was dropping the fucking truth bombs quicker than Tony Blair in Iraq. There's tons of really good advice there for any bands and musicians listening that, want to know how to navigate the new world that we're in. And I think that everything he said is sound, man. He's got a really good outlook on these things. He knows what he's talking about. And he even managed to convert me, a lifelong Democrat socialist, that actually, fuck that. Let's just get Stephen Fry to run the place. I'm done with democracy, man. I'm done with the British voting public. They're fucking idiots. Masochistic, gullible idiots. I mean, it's the only way I can explain it at this point. We must like the pain. And no matter how obvious the evidence is to the contrary, if the Daily Mail or the Sun says anything at all, we just mindlessly fucking lap it up, regardless of what you're seeing outside your own fucking window. Meanwhile, over the other side of the channel, not so far away, the French are burning shit down. And that's why they got better transport than us, better healthcare than us, better food than us, fucking better life than us. Whereas we'd just rather moan about it and go to the pub. Well, I think Mr. Dan Donnelly is right. Time to get a benevolent dictator. I'd throw my hat into the ring, but I could not be trusted to be benevolent. I'm far too impatient. But let us know in the comments who you would choose as this country's benevolent dictator. And if the owners of Tan Hill Pub in the Yorkshire Dales are listening, I want a gig. That sounds fucking mental. So, Dan Donnelly can be found on Instagram at Dan Son of a Gun. He's on Twitter at Dan Dinnerlady, on Facebook at Dan Donnelly Music, and of course, anything related to the Mighty Levelers. He's got an awesome back catalogue of music. Do go and check it out and give him a follow on his pages. And whilst you're there, what else can you do? You can give this podcast a follow as well, because I know that most people that listen to this podcast are not yet following it. I do know this shit. Spotify has grasped on all of you. Okay, so I know that more people listen to this thing than are actually subscribing and following. You know it's free to do that, right? You know it's free to follow and subscribe, and takes nothing more than a mere click of a button on your part. So get on it and help a brother out, man. Will I be back next week with another episode? Who the hell knows? I don't know. Should you hold your breath for it? Most definitely not. But who knows what's going to land in my inbox over the next week, So we'll see. In the meantime, go and blast the entire back catalogue of Dan Donnelly, and I will see you when I see you. Thanks for all the support. Thanks for listening. Thanks for sticking around. Have a great week. Look after yourself. Take care of each other. Fight the power. Spread the love. Catch you soon. Take it easy.